Thank you, Governor Morrissey. And thank you, Speaker Schultz. Thank you to Dr. Mark Hyman, who's been my friend and partner on these issues for over 20 years. Thanks, Vonnie Harry, who's been an extraordinary leader. And then Marty McCary, I'm so grateful that you agreed to join the administration. And Jay Bhattacharya, will you guys come up here and stand behind me? We have an amazing team at HHS. When my uncle was president in the 1960s, we had the healthiest people in the world. And one of the basic assumptions of our country was that because we were robust people, because we were vigorous, because we were tough, we had what my uncle called this beef jerky toughness that was responsible for our country being the land of the brave and the home of the free, the greatest industrial power in the world, the wealthiest country. We owned half the wealth on earth when my uncle was president, and part of that was because of the vigor of our society. And that's one of the reasons he started the Presidential Council on Physical Fitness, because he saw that he felt that Americans were getting soft, and it was going to steal from us and erode all of our leadership, our moral authority, and our values, and our role as an exemplary nation. And since his death, we've had this extraordinary chronic disease epidemic. When my uncle was president, 3% of American kids had chronic disease. Today, it's around 60%. And these are a broad category, the ones that Marty mentioned, like ADHD, the neurological disorders, ADD, ADHD, speech delay, language delay, tics, Tourette syndrome, narcolepsy, ASD, and autism. All of these are injuries that I never heard of when I was a kid. They were not part of the nomenclature. They weren't part of the dialogue. There was zero spent in this country treating chronic disease when my uncle was president. Today, it's about $1.8 trillion annually. It's bankrupting our nation. 74% of American kids cannot qualify for military service. How are we going to maintain our global leadership with such a sick population? We have all these autoimmune diseases, these exotic diseases, and again, I never heard of juvenile diabetes, rheumatoid arthritis, lupus, Crohn's disease, and 100 others that were just unknown when I was a kid. I never knew anybody with a peanut allergy. I never knew anybody with a food allergy. Why do 5 of my 7 kids have allergies? I never knew of anybody who had eczema. I knew of a very small number of children who had asthma, but that has exploded as well today. And our fertility is dropping dramatically. Teenagers in this country today have the same testosterone levels as 68-year-old men. Our girls are reaching puberty 6 years early, from 10 to 14 years old. And this is existential for our country. And we have to address it. And one of the problems, when I met with, and I want to commend the food companies for working with us to achieve this agreement or this settlement. And when I went in a few months or about a month ago to meet with the food companies, I was talking with my staff about these petroleum-based dyes, and I said, if they want to add petroleum, if they want to eat petroleum, they ought to add it themselves at home. But they shouldn't be feeding it to the rest of us. And without our knowledge or consent. And unfortunately, we are going to get rid of the dyes, and then one by one, we're going to get rid of every ingredient and additive in food that we can legally address. One of the problems is that the industry, which all of these industries, cast a dark shadow historically over this agency. And there's so many conflicts that we are now systematically eliminating. That has allowed them to suppress the science. There's shockingly few studies, even on food dyes, and on all these other ingredients as well. And Jay Bhattacharya, who is here and who is running the director of NIH, is now narrowly targeting these kind of food additives for scientific study, so that one by one we can start eliminating them where they can. Where we can't, there's things that we'll never be able to eliminate, like sugar. And sugar is poison, and Americans need to know that. It is poisoning us. It's giving us a diabetes crisis. When I was a kid, I always say this, a typical pediatrician would see one case of diabetes in his lifetime. Today, it's 1 out of every 3 kids who walks through his office door. In our most recent study from NIH, 38% of American teens, it's half our adult population. This is existential. We are spending as much on mitochondrial disorders like diabetes as we spend on our military budget. We can't continue to exist like this. And the problem is industry is making money keeping us sick. As Jay pointed out, ADHD is associated with all these behavioral disorders. But those disorders are treated not by changing our diet, but providing medications to treat our kids. And they get medicated, and that's the only solution. And, I would point out that there is part of the etiology of these diseases is a kind of media malpractice, a mass psychosis that has our media not talking about this. And one of the possible reasons for that is the amount of money that's coming from the pharmaceutical companies into our media and from these food companies, or the advertising. And the advertising has at least plays a factor. So that revenue, that extraordinary revenue stream, in disabling their capacity or their inclination for skepticism and for critical thinking. So Americans don't know what they're eating, and they don't know the implications of those things. And for those products, Mark Hyman says in his book, the 10-day sugar detox diet, which I'll give a plug to, is a very good book. He talks about how dangerous sugar is and how it's as addictive as crack. And our children are addicted to it from when they're little kids. Our agency recommends, I think, a huge amount of sugar for kids from when they're born. And it's hurting them, and it's addicting them, and it's changing their taste buds so that they crave it. And it's disabling our population. So for those ingredients that we can't ban legally, we're going to start informing Americans about what they're eating. And we're going to try to work with Congress and the White House to make sure that we have adequate labeling so mothers who go into the grocery stores know what is good for their children and what is not. I want to say one other thing about the moms. When I went and spoke for the first time, and I met with the heads of all the food industry companies, one of the things that they said to us is that the worst thing for us is if we have a patchwork of legislation in all these different states, because then we're not capable of marketing nationally distributed products, because we're going to have different regulations in every state. And they didn't want that, and that's one of the reasons they came to the table with us. I want to thank Speaker Schultz, and I want to thank Governor Morrissey, and I visited many other governors in Virginia and West Virginia, in Arizona and Utah, and other states that are having these local bans. But those bans have given us leverage to make demands in the food company, and the only reason that those states have banned these products is because of these ladies and millions of more across the country, the warrior moms who have powered the MAHA movement. And I just want to urge all of you, it's not the time to stop. It's the time to redouble your efforts, because we have them on the run now. And we are going to win this battle. And 4 years from now, we're going to have most of these products off the market, or you will know about them when you go in the grocery store. So I want to thank you. And finally, and most importantly, I want to thank President Trump. President Trump often, says that he's going to make America great again. But he knows that he cannot make our country great again if our country is weak, if we're not healthy, if we don't have vigor, if we're not a robust people. He says that he's going to restore the American dream. And a healthy person has 1,000 dreams. The sick person only has one. And right now, there's 60% of the people in this country who have only one dream, that they can make it through a day without pain, with energy, without having to take medications. And we are going to change that for our country. And I want to thank the moms and thank President Trump for his confidence in my leadership and for allowing me to surround myself with such an extraordinary team of scientists who are going to restore transparency to this agency. We're going to do replicated science. We're going to restore gold standard science so we know what's in our food and we can eliminate it. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Secretary Kennedy. Thank you to everyone for being here, and thank you to the press for attending today. We're going to take some questions from the press. If you can please say your first, last name, and outlet when I call on you, that would be great. Sarah, CNN.
Here. I got it. Okay, yeah.
Hi, Sarah Overmall from CNN. Secretary Kennedy, you talked about how sugar is poison and how it's addictive. Is that the next step for you, looking at policies to reduce or even eliminate sugar in food products?
I don't think that we're going to be able to eliminate sugar, but I think what we need to do probably is give Americans knowledge about how much sugar is in their products, and also with the new nutrition guidelines, we'll give them a very clear idea about how much sugar they should be using, which is 0.
Yes.
Hi, Helena Bottomiller-Evich with Food Fix. You mentioned the goal is to work with the food industry to get most of the major synthetic food dyes out. What is the plan if the food industry does not voluntarily agree to do that? And what are the next steps if you can't get agreement within the industry? Thank you.
Well, here the industry has voluntarily agreed. And so, I think as we move forward, we are going to work with the industry. They've shown a lot of leadership on this right now. And in fact, we're getting food companies now and fast food companies who are calling us almost every day and asking us, how do we do this? What do you want us to do? Will you do a press conference with us? And so we're really happy with the reception. I think they're ready to change the industry. They have children too. There's no such thing as Republican children or Democratic children. Their children are going to the same schools, they're eating the same foods as the rest of us. And I think most of them really want to have a healthier America. They want clear guidelines, and they want to know what they can and can't do, and we're going to give them that.
Yes.
Hi, Margaret Manto with Notice. I'm wondering if there's any pharmaceutical additives that you'd like to eliminate?
We're gonna start on that next. I don't have anything particular there.
Yes, in the white.
Hi, Emily Kopp, Daily Caller. When will HHS FOIA offices be restored? This is important for many of your stated priorities, adverse events, food.
We're working to restore all of them.
What?
FOIA.
When is our FOIA?
A lot of the FOIA offices were eliminated by those.
We're restoring all the FOIA offices, and we're going to make it much easier for people to get the information. We're going to try to post as much as we can. We're going to start a website with all former FOIA requests and the documents that were produced so people don't have to do it again and again. And we're going to try to get as close as we can to total transparency in this agency. You know, I spent a lot of years litigating under FOIA, and I experienced the frustration of going year after year and being stonewalled by the agencies. A lot of the people who are in HHS right now come from that background. So we all understand how important it is to have, you know, clear communications. Well, the papers that we produce in this agency do not belong to us. They belong to the American people, and we need to be honest with them. And let me just answer the question before you about the drugs and the pharmaceutical products and the additives to the pharmaceutical products. Right now, Jay Bhattacharya is working is assembling teams all over the country of scientists at universities and research centers to look at all of those products so that we can have, I mean, one of the problems is we don't have good science on everything. And we need to have science before we take policy action. And that science has been suppressed systematically for decades because of the conflicts in this agency. We're going to remove those conflicts. We're doing the science, already doing it. And we'll be announcing a series of grant opportunities this summer on all of these different ingredients. And we're going to have good information for the American public, and then we will take appropriate action.
Ashley.
Ashley DeMello with Fox News Digital. Will there be a way for Americans to identify products that are complying with this phase out? Such as labeling or?
We're looking at labeling. Labeling, we have to go to Congress for. But one of the things that we're going to do is we're going to post all the information we have about every additive on an open source website. So that, and we're going to encourage companies that develop apps. There are a number of other apps out there today, like Yucca is one, but there are a number of others. I use Yucca, and my wife used it in our home. Those apps, then you can use. Those companies will develop apps in the private marketplace, so that mothers can go in, they can scan a barcode of every product in their grocery store, and they can know what's in it and what's not.
Thank you. Jan?
So, Secretary Kennedy, you have a lot of issues on the MAHA agenda, obviously. And I'm very curious if you could share some of the logic of choosing, for example, autism and food dyes and things as some of the kind of inaugural issues that you're coming forward with.
I would say, you know, we're in a triage situation now, so we're choosing our priorities based upon the issues. I mean, food dye is just a no-brainer. Nobody wants to eat petroleum. Everybody knows there's enough science out there that we know it's terrible for you, that causes health problems, but also behavioral problems. And so we can act on that now. Anything that we can act on, we're going to act on immediately. Some stuff we need science for. We just need to do more science. But a lot of times you hear people say, oh, we're going to do more science on that, and then 10 years go by. That's not going to happen. President Trump wants dramatic change. President Trump wants dramatic change in the next 2 years, and we're going to deliver that for him. In terms of autism is a priority. We've gone from 1 in 10,000 now to 1 in 31, 1 in every 20 boys. This is 1,000 times more impactful to our country from an economic point of view, from a moral point of view, from just from the perspective of just our national well-being. That it has to be. It's costed by 2035. is going to cost us, autism alone, just one of these chronic diseases will cost our country $1 trillion a year. We have to end that, and we have to end that because the children and the families are suffering so terribly. So that has been a priority for me for 20 years, and it will continue to be a priority, and we are going to find the answer very, very quickly, and we're going to eliminate the exposures that are causing it.
Yes.
Secretary Kennedy, Issam Ahmed here from Agence France Presse. Just on the political dimensions, do you sort of give credit to the former President Joe Biden for getting the ball rolling with Red Dye 3? And as far as the labeling goes, you mentioned you have to go to Congress. Are you in discussions with lawmakers on both sides of the aisle regarding improved labeling around food? Thank you.
We have not yet. The time has not yet come for us to put our legislative proposals before Congress. Labeling will be a top priority proposal for us. In terms of the credit, I credit President Biden for getting it done. I wish it hadn't taken him to 1 week before I came into office before he did it. Let's give credit where credit's due.
Okay, one more question right there in the pink.
Thank you, Secretary Kennedy. Cheryl Gay Stolberg from the New York Times. I just want to make sure we understand the parameters of this agreement with the food companies. Do you actually have a settlement with the food companies and a formal agreement for them to adhere to these guidelines? And if so, why don't we have anyone from the food industry here?
I would say we don't have an agreement, we have an understanding, but I'm going to let Marty take this question.